Hello, everyone! Welcome back to Deep Space Babylon 59. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Eric.
And today, Eric and I are talking about the second episode of DS9 and the, or what I guess... The first episode of Babylon 5 after the pilot TV movie.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody who watched the first episode and especially folks that commented. I thought that the response was really encouraging, and I'm really excited to have a group of people following us with this.
Well, and I love that there are people that are Babylon 5 fans, people that are Star Trek fans, and some people that are a little bit on both sides. Like, it seems like a really good mix. It's really nice.
Yeah, it was I didn't expect, Eric, to see nearly as many people that knew Babylon 5 as well as they do.
Neither did I. So someone made a joke that was a pun that I didn't get because I wasn't thinking in puns. I responded. I was like, I don't get it, and he's like, well, it's this thing. I was like, oh, that thing. I didn't get it because it was a pun, and
yeah,
I know some people's brains naturally work in puns, but mine does not.
Like with so many things on this channel, one of the reasons that we're doing this show is as much for us to learn something as it is to, impart any information about something ourselves. And I learned so much, Eric, from you about Babylon 5 that first episode, but I learned a lot of things from people in the comments, too. And even about DS9. A couple things came up that I didn't know.
One of the things was that apparently Lost in Space was kind of a swipe of Star Trek. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I hadn't either.
So I don't know if that's like verified, but like someone brought up that like a similar situation happened with the first Star Trek. So yeah. I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, and somebody sent us a video with an interview with JMS talking about the guy who plays Sinclair and why he's not there after the first season.
Oh, I didn't click on that.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you about that.
I've heard him talk about
later
in the commentaries for the episodes, but it's been years since I listened to those, so I have foggy memories.
Okay, yeah.
I know he said that like he packed too much backstory into one character, and so he kind of split into two characters.
It apparently had to do also with a lot more so with a really unfortunate mental illness situation.
Oh.
And yeah, we'll talk about it later on. But I'll send you that interview because you should hear it from the horse's mouth. It's really interesting. And really sad. It was a thing that he wasn't that he was asked not to talk about for the longest time, and now he's allowed to talk about it.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe that's why. Like, I feel like I would remember something like that. So maybe that's why like it doesn't show up on the commentaries. Like maybe that was still too close to.
Oh yeah, no. It looks like he only just started talking about it.
That's really interesting.
Because I think he passed away.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah,
anyway,
actually, a number of actors from this show have passed away.
And he talked about that in that interview. Yeah, I'll send you that. I just assumed you had already seen that interview, and so, yeah.
No, I have not seen that. There's two things, before we jump in the shows, two small notes that I wanted to bring up.
Yes.
That I felt like I should have brought up last time, but forgot. One of them is, and I talked to you about this on Facebook, but I just want to bring it up in the video. You kept saying that JMS like must have been a Star Trek fan, and I totally like blanked when you were talking about it. But he is, and he in fact pitched a Star Trek reboot TV show before the Abrams film.
Yeah, and that was the thing I knew about. I feel like I even brought that up in the video, but maybe I didn't. What I didn't know was that he wanted to reboot TOS back then.
Yes. It was a complete reboot.
But yes, I did know that he in the mid-2000s, very shortly after Enterprise was canceled, he pitched a show to Paramount.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we at the beginning we went through a bunch of like similarities between the shows and just Star Trek and Babylon 5 in general. A lot of, Jakar, as you said, was an actor from Star Trek, and like a lot of go-between. Obviously, the big one that I think I forgot to mention is that Harlan Ellison is a creative consultant on Babylon 5.
Mm-hmm.
So he's heavily involved in this, and obviously he's had an on-again, off-again history with Star Trek?
One episode.
Well, but he was also supposed to the motion picture.
Yeah, but then that didn't happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, somewhat involved.
Yeah.
Who's to know there was no cavemen when there was dinosaurs? I'm to know. I'm the writer. One of my favorite Harlan Ellison stories.
So, we're gonna mix things up and have a little bit of variety here and jump back and forth between which show we start with. I'm sorry, what?
I said this episode is a game show.
It's a game
you
show?
Said variety and mix things up.
Oh, okay.
You said variety and mix things. I was like, yeah, this episode's a game show.
So, last time we started with Babylon 5, so today we're going to start with Deep Space Nine. And the episode in question is A Man Alone, and Eric's going to tell us about what happens in it and what he thought of it, because Eric doesn't know Deep Space Nine, and this is his first time through it. So, just like with last time, Eric's going to be doing most of the talking about Deep Space Nine, and I'll be doing most of the talking about Bab 5, but we'll certainly have a discussion also, and we'll each help fill in the blanks for the other show. Before you get started in on that, the only thing I want to mention, Eric, is that I didn't remember hardly anything about this episode. I've maybe seen it one time. I had completely forgotten that there was even an episode that established right away that Keiko sets up the school. Like, I knew she had that and does that, but that's a plot point in an episode. I forgot about that.
Well, going into it,
yeah.
I was worried because a bunch of people in the comments, including you, have all said that season 1 is bad, and you've said that you don't even watch season 1, you skip it. And TV shows have this tendency, second episodes are often really weak.
Yeah.
Like, it's a trend across TV shows. Not to, always talk about SF Debris when we're talking about science fiction, but he has like a tradition where every year, I think it's Christmas, he does the worst episode of a franchise, and Stargate's second episode is the worst episode of that franchise.
That's pretty bad.
So I was a little worried going into this. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. Like, I don't think it's perfect, but like I thought it was quite enjoyable. I've got
good.
Notes. I'm kind of gonna run through my notes.
After your response to the pilot, I'm glad you weren't like, more of this.
Well, you know what? I will say right off the bat, almost every major character, because I didn't gravitate to anybody except for Quark in that pilot. I thought they were all kind of bland. Almost every single one of them seemed so much more vibrant and had so much more personality. I liked most of the cast. Except for the girl with the wrinkly nose. Kira. Still not in love with her.
Yeah,
and
just
Sisko kind of...
Eric, just get used to what Bajorans look like. Because you keep saying girl with a wrinkly nose. Yeah, well, the bad guy in this episode also has a wrinkly nose because they're around Bajor, and you're going to see a lot of Bajorans.
Well, I was trying to differentiate her because I couldn't remember her name. It's Kira, right?
Yes.
Okay. Kira kind of, like, I don't dislike her. I just don't have any feelings toward her.
Well, she gets nothing in that episode.
Yeah, Sisko's kind of the same way. Sisko doesn't get a lot in this episode either.
Yeah.
But I really, really liked Odo in this episode. O'Brien doesn't have a lot to do, but, like, he seemed to have a lot of personality.
Mm-hmm.
Or a lot more personality than he did in the first episode. And the guy that's dating Dax, what is his name?
Well, I mean, not dating Dax, but yeah, Bashir.
Well, wants to date Dax.
Right.
He also had 100 times more personality than he did in the first episode, and I really enjoyed them. That was my biggest fear watching the first episode going to this one, was that everyone was going to be really bland, and I felt like in this episode, if I took anything away, it's that they have personality, and I genuinely enjoy these characters. At least, enough to keep watching. So that was my big takeaway from this episode, was that, oh, okay, cool, I have some characters that I can latch on to and like. My first note is about the cold open, which is, I'm just going to read my note.
Yeah.
Bubble video game cold open. Man, the future is boring.
And video games around TNG era are always like that.
It's just a soap bubble that you concentrate at.
Yeah, it's exactly like the game in TNG, where there's this thing you put over your eyes and you use your brain to get a disc in a hole. Because there's a lot of sexual innuendo in that episode. But yeah, it seems like a lot of games in Star Trek are concentrate really hard and make a ball do a thing.
Well, but this one was just floating there, and she's like, well, it's a brain teaser. And he's like, huh? And she's like, it's a puzzle. And he's like, puzzle? Like he's never heard words before. And then he sits down. She's like, concentrate. And then it just turns off. And she's like, well, you weren't concentrating good enough. And I was like, but what would happen if he did concentrate good enough? Like, what is the... Like, how is a bubble a puzzle? Like, I couldn't figure out...
What's the object of the game? What are you supposed to make it do? I think she sort of tells him. I forget.
Well, she says... She just... I only caught her saying concentrate. When you concentrate something, the game.
But yeah, obviously the point was she's teasing him because she knows that he's girl crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's exactly what's going on. But I could spend this whole episode just talking about how ridiculous that video game is. Okay, so I right off the bat, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because kind of the opening scene after the opening credits, which, by the way, do the credits change, or is this the opening for the entire show?
They change only slightly, and pretty much just when there's later on there's a spaceship we use a lot, and it's added. But yeah, it's pretty much the same.
I kind of don't love these opening credits. They're just kind of circling the Deep Space Nine.
It's boring.
Okay.
Song's
all right,
good.
As long as I'm not alone.
Song's good, but it's dull.
Yeah, okay. Just as long as I'm not alone, I thought it was kind of boring.
I cannot watch... I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but I cannot watch DS9 with my wife without her complaining about those credits.
Well, good. At least I'm in good company.
You are, because she knows Star Trek as well or better than I do, and she hates those opening credits.
So we opened with Odo and Quark having this conversation, and Odo reveals that he's never mated. I forget. They use a euphemism. I think it's coupling.
Coupling. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, he's like, you've never coupled?
You've never coupled?
And I love Odo's breakdown of where he's like, you want to watch the Coronet game, and she wants to listen to music. So you compromise. You listen to music. And you want to listen to such and such music, and she wants to listen to Klingon opera.
Klingon opera.
So you compromise, and you listen to Klingon opera. Is Coronet game, is that a thing in Star Trek, or is that just a random word that they came up with?
Yeah, as far as I know, that never comes up again. But Klingon opera is a thing, and it comes up several times in DS9.
Well, I was paying attention to the wrong part of that statement, I guess.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying it's amusing because, like, later on, like, once Worf comes in, Klingon opera comes up all the time.
Well, because you'd said...
but that's also, like, a holdover
that
from
baseball
TNG.
doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if, like, Coronet game was, like, an actual, like, thing that's, like, in the Star Trek universe.
No, and you will hear, like, made-up games and things that come up and become recurring things that we talk about and see played and stuff. Like, the main... like we have a reference, and I think we even see it, to Dabo in this episode. That's the main game they play in the bar. So you'll hear them shout Dabo all the time. That's kind of their roulette.
Okay, I'm just going to assume that Coronet game is like space Quidditch.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just going to assume that that's what that is. I thought the conversation between Sisko and Dax was really interesting, not in as much as it was written, but just the implications of your friend being in a different body and like trying to keep the same relationship. But, like, I don't know, it's one of those science fiction things where it's like, it's an idea where you're like, well, I'm never going to have to deal with this. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's a really complicated thought. And I thought it was a really fascinating idea of, Like if somebody you know gets put in a different body,
I kind of liked...
Naturally, that's going to change.
I kind of liked her get comfortable with your discomfort.
That's funny, because I thought that line was nonsensical, and I didn't know what that meant.
Well, just, yeah, I mean, that was my gut reaction to it, too, but the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, because, like, you just have to get used to the idea that this is weird, but it doesn't mean that the things that we experience together don't matter anymore.
Well, and then, like for me, like, while I was trying to... This is not about the episode, this is about the idea, but as I was trying to think about it, I was like, I feel like the natural thing, like, what your brain would try to do is just kind of... almost like treat them like a new person you've just met. Like the idea of keeping the continuity of your relationship, just thinking about that seems very difficult.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I kind of hope it's a running thing, at least for a couple episodes. I hope this doesn't just, like... I hope this isn't the resolve of that. Because that seems like such an interesting idea for a relationship. Especially when Cisco starts talking about all the shenanigans they used to get into, which sounded incredibly explicit before he cuts off, because he's talking to its new boyfriend, or guy that wants to be your boyfriend. But yeah, I don't remember what his story was, but it was something about, like, sneaking in on, like, girls, and it seemed really explicit for Star Trek.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that right away with DS9, where it's trying to make a big deal out of we are different than you're used to with Star Trek, and maybe a little bit more adult.
Okay, well, I mean that makes sense. But the way that story starts, I was like, there's no way this ends wholesomely. And then he doesn't finish the story. I'm like, oh, you're leaving it to my imagination. And my imagination is going to go to so much worse places than you go.
And that's consistent with what we find, with what we know later on about Curzon, because he's very much like a ladies' man and kind of a womanizer.
Okay. Okay, so...
You'll be surprised by just how much we learn about Curzon. Like he gets very fleshed out.
And he is the security chief that wants to date Dax?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The previous host. So the guy she was...
Oh, the previous Dax, right.
Yeah, the who Dax was before she was put in Jadzia.
This is one of those
things...
things...
Before he was put in Jadzia. Yeah.
Where, like, I'm glad that you told me that, like, nothing that we're being told has established before.
Yeah.
Because it feels like they have, like, this deep history that, like, I could go back. So there's this guy that's like this terrible war profiteer that Odo knows, and he just tells him to get off his station. And then that guy gets murdered. And I meant to bring this up last episode, because I don't remember what it was, but something happened last episode that made me think of it. So there are no cameras on Deep Space Nine?
That's always an issue in Star Trek.
Something happened last episode, I don't remember what it was, where I was like, well, just check the camera feed. Why aren't you checking the camera feed? And this kind of
and you think the security chief could... And the thing is, sometimes they have them and sometimes they don't. Because you will sometimes see Odo... Now that I'm thinking about it, I think Odo sometimes does check a security feed in his office. But they seem to almost always be, like, hidden cameras in weird places where he's just, like where he put them specifically because he knew a particular thing was about to happen, usually with Quark. Like, oh, Quark's gonna smuggle something onto the station. I better put a camera there. That's what I remember it usually being, anyway.
He checked the number of times the door opened, and that seemed pretty smart, but it would have been smarter if there was a camera. Like, this entire episode doesn't happen if there's a camera.
And then the other thing he'll do, like you saw in the pilot, is he'll just pretend to be an inanimate object and then show up and be like, "Ha, I got you!" It's like, no, you could have used a camera and just gotten it on tape and then beamed there and gotten him. But we want to showcase the fact that you're a shapeshifter.
I find the idea that once every 18 hours, he has to go become like a puddle in a bucket
Mm-hmm.
is really cool and weird. I really like that. Like, I like that. Well, and I'm kind of curious because he doesn't take a human form, so I just assumed that, like, that was his natural state.
Right.
But it's not. So it's a choice to not look human.
Okay, so I'm trying not to tell you too much stuff before you get to it, but the deal with that is supposed to be that Odo isn't good enough at shapeshifting to make his face look fully human, so that's the best he can do.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know if it was a distinct choice to, like, be like, well, I'm not human, so I'm not going to look fully human.
Yeah, he can't do it.
Okay.
You wonder how he gets the bones in his neck to protrude like a normal person's, and things like that. But yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, like, detail with facial structure. I could see how that could be an issue.
That's supposed to be the idea.
Can
I tell you, I'm sorry, real quick, because you brought up the bucket thing, and I didn't know you were going to go there. Can I tell you a quick music anecdote? I met René Auberjonois, who plays Odo, at a convention once, and I had him sign an ice cream bucket.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. Did he get it?
He gave me this look like 1,000 people have done that.
Oh.
It was really funny. Yeah, he wasn't amused at all. He just signed it. He was a nice guy, but he just gave me this look like, yes, I get it. Because I wasn't, fanboyish where I was like, you get it? It's a bucket! But he just gave me this look like, yeah, okay. It wasn't like the look John Delancey gave me when I wore the Q Judges robes, though. That's my favorite. He just shakes his head and goes, you don't wear that in public, do you? It's fantastic. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, speaking of Q, someone mentioned in the comments that Q and the Prophets hang out in the IDW comics.
In a miniseries that I remember making no sense at all. Yeah, it was unfortunate. That was a cool idea, but
well, so just to foster your annoyance of my Bajorn racism, I have a note that just says, calling it now, wrinkle nose guy is the killer.
No, I'm sorry. I don't.
There's a guy that comes forth and he's like,
I don't mean to be prudish about it. It's just the Bajorans will be the main race that we're dealing with. You'll see more of them than humans.
Okay. Well, there's a Bajorn who comes to Cisco and like says like, well, right before all this happened, I was talking with him and he said he was worried Odo was going to kill him. And I was like, oh, well, you killed him. I was wrong. But to be fair, I think they cheated as far as mysteries go.
Yeah. How would you ever call that it's a clone that he makes of himself?
Well, my last note is actually, do clones exist before this? And are there clues that this could be solvable if I was a Star Trek fan?
I don't think so. I never would have thought clone, but there certainly was precedent for cloning. Yeah.
Okay.
It is a thing that we know exists and that we deal with. There's a TNG episode where there's a couple TNG episodes about cloning, and I forget what it's called, but there's one early on that's about a species where there are only like a few different faces that people have, and you come to find out that they've been cloning themselves forever, and that they're trying to use the Enterprise crew's DNA to keep the bloodlines going because they've been recycling it for too many generations. That's an interesting one.
Is the episode called Bloodlines?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that is a TNG or a DS9 episode though.
It's also a terrible crossover of DC Comics in the early 90s.
That's true. It is. I remember that. I'm sorry. I'm taking up your time.
So O'Brien's girlfriend.
Wife.
What is her name?
Keiko O'Brien.
Keiko. Okay, so there's a subplot to this whole thing where she decides she wants to open a school because there's like a dozen kids on the station, and they're just apparently running around. Because we see Jake and Quark's son. Is it Quark's son?
Oh yeah, Bloodlines is a TNG episode. It's a season 7 episode with that Ferengi guy that hates Picard. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's Quark's son.
Nod.
Again, I don't want to be racist, but all of them look the same. So when his dad comes in, I just assume it's Quark, but I don't know. But
when his dad comes in? Okay, so his dad is Rom, and Rom is Quark's brother.
So they are related, but it's not Quark's son.
And he works for him. No, that's Quark's nephew.
Okay.
And you'll find, and once again, this is neither here nor there, but Rom ends up being a pretty important character later on, and eventually we completely reinvent him, and he doesn't act anything like he acts right now.
Okay.
A few seasons later, you'll see Rom. He's a totally different character. He's being played by Max Grodachik, who played one of the early Ferengis in TNG, and actually Armin Shimmerman played one of the first Ferengi. Also, they keep recasting the same people to play different Ferengi. And the guy who plays Rom is playing him exactly like the guy he played in the first TNG episode he was in, and then they totally reinvent him later on. That was I think Perfect Mate. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so Jake and Rom the Space Knights kid, they're hanging out, and do they poison these people's food? Is that what I'm to understand? Because at first I thought they were pickpocketing them, and then the people start freaking out and changing different colors and itching.
They had those little gnat-looking things, so I assume they put them on their skin, probably.
Oh, okay.
And they make them change different colors, and then suddenly they're fine, so I guess the gnats, mess with you and then leave?
Which, by the way...
I don't know what's going on with that. It's strange.
They're changing colors, and it's horrifying. They're like, please get a doctor, and that stops. And everyone in the bar, we cut to other people, and everyone's reaction is basically like, well, those crazies over there... I was like, no, they were changing colors.
Those weirdos over there freaking out because they were just changing colors.
But so Keiko decides she should open a school, which I thought was a great idea. It seemed like one of those things that would accidentally get missed when you're building a new thing like this, and it's such an obvious extension. I thought it was a great idea. And then there's this scene. I don't know if Avery Brooks is doing a bad job or understands that the scene is dumb. But so she pitches the idea to Sisko, and he says, "That's a terrific idea. What do you need?" And instead of being well, if you're actually gonna let me do this, let me work up Are
you there?
Oh, no.
Hey, Eric, I lost you for a second. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. The last thing I heard you say was... Can you hear me? The last thing I heard you say was, if instead of saying this, she said this.
Okay. So instead of saying okay, well, let me make a list.
Yeah.
And actually let me figure out what I actually need to run a school. She just kind of starts stammering and is like, a place? And Cisco's like, yeah, I'll give you a place. And she's like, some computers? And he's like, yeah, I'll give you... she didn't think it through at all. If I asked someone what they needed for this, business they wanted to start, and they were like, well, some chairs. Chairs would be good. Maybe a desk. She seemed so unprepared, she was not expecting Sisko to say yes. And Sisko seemed slightly concerned. But again, I'm not sure if it's intentional or not. He just seems like, yeah, a space and computers are necessary to run a school.
See, I read that scene differently, but now that you're saying that, it is kind of silly that she didn't come with any ideas in her, or at the very least that she didn't say, "Okay, I'll get back with you with a list of supplies and we can negotiate."
That's what I would have expected her to
You'd think there'd be a negotiation, and I mean, like, when he says anything you need, I'd be like, "Okay, I'm gonna make a list and hand it to you and see if you'll actually give me everything I need."
Yeah. It was just a really awkward scene. Okay, so Odo has my favorite moment in this entire episode because it's silly. It's actually kind of clever, but it's also silly in just a TV way. So it's pretty common in television shows, especially in 90s TV shows, for the character to turn to the screen. You made fun of it in Babylon 5 last time. For the character to like turn to the screen and be like, "He did it," or "The killer must be a man
that just walked in just now."
Yeah. In this episode, Odo does it to himself. I've never seen that done before, where he goes, "The only way that the only way anyone could have gotten into this room would be if someone could go through the doors. Say, a shapeshifter." Cut to black. I loved that so much.
I didn't think that was silly in the way it was in Babylon. It was funny in Babylon 5 because it was so over the top and pointing, and Sinclair just walked in.
But I thought it was funny that like he just did the traditional sting of like
being cryptic about it, not coming right out and saying it. Yeah.
But it was him. He was pointing the finger at himself.
I don't know. I think it kind of works because he's like, because he he's trying not to implicate himself and he knows he didn't do it, but he's the only possible suspect, and that makes him kind of endearing there, I think. But you're right. It is.
This is going to be a problem with later in the episode.
Okay.
Because I think he's really reasonable and like goes about this the best way he possibly could. Like he openly is like, "Well, yeah, I'm a suspect. Like I'm kind of the only candidate that makes sense." And then when he talks to Cisco later, he gets like in a huff about it when Cisco's like, "Well, I'm going to have to take you off the case."
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, and it makes complete and total sense. And Odo's really upset. And I felt like that was contradictory to how he was acting for the rest of the episode.
No, that's that's totally fair. Especially because like Kira was even right toward the end when she's like, "Look, he had every opportunity to try to cover this up and didn't."
Which, the follow-up line that, like, I feel like would be the obvious line would be, "Yeah, but maybe he knew that we would think that, and so he did it so that we would trust him."
That's right, it's reverse psychology.
When the riot that comes out of nowhere shows up, and he's in his room, or he's in his office, and there's the riot with everything but, like, pitchforks and torches.
Yeah, they have phasers instead.
Yeah, and like I get that like there's the one guy and like maybe he could rile up like a couple of people. There were a lot of people there, which I'm gonna get to in the question section. But
okay.
They only yell 3 phrases over and over.
Yeah, and shifter was, and then it just turned into shifter.
Well, it's because I have the subtitles on. It's shapeshifter. Then it's freak. I'm like, okay. And then it's murder shifter. And I was like, well, that's just not clever at all. I was like, who wrote that? Like, that's terrible. Like, that's not even trying.
Murder shifter. I think that was a Michael Piller script. I think it was. May he rest in peace.
I don't want to be mean to Odo, because I actually really liked Odo.
Yeah.
I really wish he was Jeffrey Combs.
Well, don't worry, because you'll get a much more Jeffrey Combsy role later for Jeffrey Combs.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, no, Jeffrey Combs is a big reason I love the show. Just wait till we get there. He plays not 1 but 2 recurring roles in the show. This is half the reason I've been trying to get you to watch the show, is that Jeffrey Combs is a big deal in it. But not until, like, season 3 or 4.
Okay. It was just Odo felt like a Jeffrey Combs role.
Yeah, Rene
And I
Auberjonois
knew
very
he was
much.
in TNG. So.
Yeah, Rene Auberjonois very much comes into his own in that role. He's not doing the growly voice that he usually does later on.
He does.
He started doing it a little bit,
and it was really weird.
Yeah, and that's how he auditioned that role, and he pulls back a little bit on that in the early episodes. Later on, he's always talking like that, and it totally changes the dynamic and makes a lot more sense.
I thought I was like miswatching the scene. Like I'm like, well, that's not the same character. Like clearly I'm mistaken, because his voice was so noticeably different in one scene in this episode. Let's see. I don't really have a lot more notes because I kind of covered some of them earlier. I thought this was I thought this was a pretty solid episode. I liked it better than I liked the pilot. I thought it was clearer. I thought it was less. Like I felt like I got a better sense of who the people were in half the amount of time. So I enjoyed this. But I have a question. I really only have one big question. What is the purpose of Deep Space Nine? Like, why are all of these people hanging out on the station? Like in Babylon 5, it's an outpost for political discourse, so it makes sense that a bunch of people are living there. Why are all of these people here? It's like the last stop before what they say is the new frontier beyond the portal.
Beyond the wormhole, and we didn't even know we had the wormhole until the pilot, and you already had some people there. Yeah. I honestly, I don't know why there are as many of them as there are. So Deep Space Nine has two different names. For the Federation, it's Deep Space Nine. For the Cardassians and the Bajorans, it's Terok Nor. And again, it was a Cardassian station first. And
right, and so they make sense that they're there, but there's a lot of other people that are there, and I'm not sure why.
Well, actually, it doesn't make sense that you'd have very many Cardassians there because they obviously don't get along with the Bajorans, and they and Starfleet don't have a real cushy relationship. It's an uneasy alliance, but yeah. So it's a Bajoran at this point after the occupation. One of the things the Bajorans got in the divorce was that space station, and so it is a Bajoran station now, and it's a Bajoran run station, and that's why Kira's there. But Starfleet has been brought in to help keep the peace, and so it's now a Starfleet run station, even though it's a co-run station between Starfleet and the Bajorans, and so that's why you have a Starfleet commander, but you have an entirely Bajoran run security force run by Odo, even though he's not Bajoran. And by the way, that's the reason Odo wears the smock he wears. That's a Bajoran smock. Like, you see all the Bajorans that are security officers wearing that.
I really don't like that outfit.
It's pretty awful.
So bland.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But yeah, it's a space station for ships to dock and get supplies, and for ships to come and do trading and things like that. And there are people that live there, but the Bajorans, they can they go there when they're when they're waiting to get on a spaceship to go to some other planet. It's basically an airport.
Yeah, that's kind of the impression I got, but I can't imagine getting stirred up into a riot in an airport. I feel like I would have just been like, well, my flight's leaving in 40 minutes.
Yeah, and
sorry.
I don't know exactly how many of them are there. Well, yeah, but the thing you have to keep in mind is that the whole point of that is that Odo was the security chief there during the Cardassian occupation, and he worked with the Cardassians, and so there's some uneasy feelings about Odo in general. Because some people see him as a Cardassian supporter, even though a sympathizer, even though he wasn't. And you'll see later on what his mysterious origins are and why he was there and why he stays from between Cardassia and Bajor, taking it over. It's fuzzy how many Bajorans actually live on the station. And the only guess I have for why there's so many of them there at any one time, I think I'm right about this, is that you've got a provisional government on the planet and things aren't like the best on the planet, so some people might just not want to deal with the planet.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I was unsure why there were so many people here, and which made me question if I actually understood what the station was for.
That's fair. I don't think they make it clear enough. But like for Starfleet, it's another of the deep space stations where ships again dock and get supplies and stuff. There are other, obviously it's 9, and that's the Federation designation, the Starfleet designation. There are several other, deep space numbers, and it's one of them.
I was going to ask why it was Deep Space 9.
Yeah, because
we know why Babylon 5 is 5.
Yeah. And I don't remember if there's how often they mention them in DS9, but I think TNG has an episode where Deep Space 5 or something else comes up. I forget, but there are other numbers. It's just it's just the space stations. Because
how am I doing on time?
We're well past it. You were like I was timing you, and then we were only halfway through, so I just let you finish.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, a lot of that was you.
I'm sorry about that. Well, yeah, and that's part of the reason too. Sorry about that.
All right, so real quick.
Yeah,
you've only seen this episode once.
Yeah.
What did you think about it, coming back to it briefly?
It's okay. It's a pretty typical murder mystery plot.
Yeah, maybe that's why I liked it, was that it felt comfortable.
Yeah. I like it.
And I was expecting bad.
I like it right after the pilot because it's so down to earth and not about the Bajoran mysticism stuff, or what you were calling the Bajoran mysticism stuff. Because the pilot doesn't do a good enough job of telling you exactly what kind of show it is you're watching. The way the producers always talked about it and kind of pitched it was Roddenberry's original idea with Star Trek was Wagon Train to the Stars, and this is the Western town.
Right, which certainly is there in the pilot to some degree.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's the new sheriff and his son coming into town.
Yeah, and they just don't make it. Like it's easy to kind of miss that and forget that, and then you get to this episode and it very much feels like that kind of a show.
Yeah.
So I like it for that. I think it's smart to immediately start telling story and flesh out Odo and Dax specifically, like we are in this, because those are the two most interesting and exotic characters from the pilot.
Right.
And so that's a good way to, hook people and get them going on it. But Cisco, I mean, it's supposed to be his show, and he very much fades into the background right away, which is kind of odd and counterintuitive.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm hoping we get a more Cisco-centric episode soon, because he kind of doesn't have a presence. Yeah,
Cisco doesn't really come alive for me until later on. Once Cisco is very much in war commander mode, then he gets awesome. But you have to start shooting people a lot before Cisco gets really fun. you gotta, yeah. Anyway, that stuff's gotta happen. Okay,
the best nerds, they don't really kick in the gear until you start shooting people.
Yeah. Something else I wanted to tell you about is So of course I told you that O'Brien was established in TNG already and a recurring character there. Kayla O'Brien, of course, was there also. They get married in an episode called Data's Day, and later on she delivers her baby, Molly O'Brien, in an episode called Disaster, and they're trapped in 10 Forward, and Worf has to deliver the baby, and that whole thing is hilarious.
That sounds hilarious.
So the Babylon 5 episode in question is Midnight on the Firing Line, and this one, I gotta switch gears and get out of DS9. This is, as Eric said, very much a second pilot, and you said something last time that I was thinking very much while I was watching this, wondering if it would be true for me too, and I guess I don't know because I've seen that pilot, but you said that when you first watched this show, and you watched this episode without the first episode, you were confused. I might have also been confused, but I think I would have still immediately been enamored by it in a way that I wasn't as much with that pilot. Even though, I mean, I found that pilot really, really interesting, but as far as, like, culture and lore and stuff, yeah.
Well, and obviously I was, because I kept watching. But, like, the opening scene of this episode is not the opening scene of a pilot. See, where, like, people already really know each other and are just talking as if, like, we've been with them for a while. I don't know.
That's true, but that's what I want a pilot to do. You know what I mean? Where, like, I'm a fly on the wall and I have to catch up a little bit, where, like, you do a good enough job of giving us what we need to know who these people are. Like I felt like I got a much better read on both Londo and Jakar, and I don't, and really everybody, like Giabaldi, like, I don't know that I needed that pilot. But then
I didn't. I started without it, so you might be right.
Like, I don't know if I needed that pilot. But then I guess there are certain things here and there that I came, armed with that made me appreciate this more than I would have. So maybe that's disingenuous to say. Obviously, if I'd come to this, the main thing is, if I'd come to this without the pilot, I wouldn't have known what in the world I was looking at with Kosh.
Remember when I talked about the flashlight?
It's great. I love it. And not only is it a flashlight, but it's a flashlight behind a shower glass. It's awesome. Yeah. It's like he's taking a shower or something. I don't think he actually is. I don't think there's water on. I forget. I was like, oh, Kosh is taking a shower. And then he gets into his suit.
There's no water on.
Then he gets into his suit with the vortex face. I was really glad that suit didn't change.
No, but you do get to see the new, remember I told you last time that the Bane masks don't stick around for the oxygen masks? These are the new oxygen masks. They stick for the rest of the series.
I just think it's hilarious that we need oxygen masks that often. Like, when you said that, I was like, are there a lot of oxygen mask episodes?
Well, yeah, because the different aliens require different natural environments.
Yeah, and I just keep having to remind myself about that, because with Star Trek, I'm not used to different races needing environment. It happens with a few races, but for the most part, everybody seems to breathe the same. Although, to be fair, TNG makes it really clear at one point why exactly there are so many humanoid races, so it kind of works once we have that. But with Bab 5, yeah, I have to keep reminding myself about that. But yeah, it reminds me of a race in TNG called the Benzites, who have this breathing apparatus thing in front of their face, like, all the time, that they have to breathe through.
Well, and it's funny because now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think it ever works the other way. I don't think anybody else needs an oxygen mask to, like, go to, like, the Senate Council.
Yeah.
It's only humans going into the alien environments.
So, let me just give you a broad general impression of this. Eric, I was smitten with this. Like, I really liked it. Yeah, I really liked it. JMS is coming out swinging out the gate with this. He's got a really good command of narrative. He's got a really good command of pacing. He's not afraid, like I felt like he was a little bit in the pilot, of me not getting stuff. He just throws it at me, and like the politics in this are involved. One thing I got really worried about while watching it, and so I'm glad, because I hadn't gone ahead yet and watched that second episode of DS9 and forgot what exactly happened in that. I was immediately in the middle of this, and actually Sarah and I both said this. She's watching the show with me too, by the way. And she and I both looked at each other, and we were like, this makes DS9 look like a children's show. And I'm hoping as we go through and looking at them side by side, you won't feel that way, and I won't feel that way as much, but it's so sure of itself and so sure about all this really complex political intrigue, especially for television. It's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, well, and, it continues that.
Yeah,
I mean, that is what the show is.
That's what the show is, yeah. But just the setup for it, like I don't feel like that's really watered down. Just compared to a lot of other TV shows I've seen that have tried to do that kind of thing. And again, but like, you know, I don't want to be unfair to DS9. It's a show I like a lot. Obviously, there's a reason that we're doing this, but yeah, I had this moment where I got really insecure about DS9, and I was like, oh, I think Bab 5 might be the smarter show.
I love Lando's little monologue about, like, once you've been in politics long enough, you realize that it's just paper borders and paper alliances and there's no rules. Like, it just kind of happens. I can't remember the exact line. I had it when I started talking and I lost it.
Yeah, what you said when I was assuming that Jakar was like the main bad guy for the show, like Dukat, last episode, like really becomes clear immediately that this is a show very much about moral ambiguity and you know, nobody being exactly good or bad, but like it's very complex in that everybody, not everybody, but a lot of these races really want peace, but there are other priorities that get in the way of peace. And one of the main parallels that I kept seeing through this was nearly every, especially ambassadors, like nearly every character has to like compromise in some way that messes with the potential for peace. Like I thought that the way Earth handles the attack on the Centauri space station was just like spot on and like really bureaucratic and like really realistic. And I was like, oh, that sucks. That's very real world politics.
Earth is always like that. I also love the Centauris where they decide to do nothing. It's not important enough to make a big deal about.
Yeah, and like I like that this show is Earth-centric in the sense that it's an Earth space station and the humans are kind of in charge, but like we don't get a pass. We make all the same mistakes everybody else is making.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
And that's great. But yeah, but you're right. That was one of the more interesting things with the Centauri and Londo having to or trying to cover for them, and of course you knew how that was going to work out. But yeah, I'll just go down some notes. The main takeaway I had from this was a whole bunch of like cultural details and information that I didn't expect to get this early, that just really fleshing these races out. Again, comparing it to DS9, you know, that show has the benefit of some of those races being established already. So, like, I like that it doesn't feel the need to come out and tell us exactly what the Ferengi are, because if you've been watching Star Trek, you know that, but then that show, like, we know as much as we need to know right now. But here, in a very, I think, organic kind of way, I know a lot about the Chitauri and the Sorry, the Centauri, the Chitauri. That's a different thing. The Centauri and
there's also the Mimbari. They're also that's also a race.
That's also a thing. But them and the Narn and why they're at each other's throats. And you know, you mentioned last show that the Centauri used to be this big conquering race, and now they're kind of a laughing stock, and that rings true immediately. And I understand all of that.
Well, and I love, we have that bit at the beginning where Londo and Garibaldi are talking, and he's like, "You told us that you were the emperors of the universe, and that we were a long-lost Centauri colony."
Yeah, and then Londo has one of the best lines, and I wrote down a lot of Londo lines. He has like, he's really come alive.
I love Londo,
and I'm right that he is kind of the Quark of this show. Like, he gets all the best dialogue. Well, and obviously he's the Quark of the show for all the reasons that we talked about last time, but obviously, but actually already kind of a more interesting character, just in the, like, I like Quark a lot, but just in the sense that, of kind of the fall from grace thing. But anyway, right after what you were talking about, you told me, Giabaldi, you told me all this time that we were a long lost cousin of the Centauri. Londo, okay, we made a mistake. Slit my wrist. That's a fantastic line.
Well, I like that the follow up where he's like Centauri don't have any major organs in their wrists. He goes, of course we don't. Do you think I'm crazy?
My favorite thing in the whole episode, and I hope this keeps coming up again, is this ongoing gag slash kind of plot point maybe that Londo's people can tell when and how they're going to die through dreams. First of all, that's a really cool idea.
Okay, well, here's the thing. If you remember, Jakar also has that dream in the pilot.
Oh yeah.
This is the second time we have heard about this dream.
Okay, cool. So that'll keep coming up.
Yeah. Specifically that one.
I thought that that rivalry was immediately fascinating, but also really fun, and again reminds me a little bit of the Quark-Odo rivalry, except that it's not the same kind of playful, but it's still kind of playful. It's deadly and playful, which makes it really fun. But that whole thing. Something
that you'll see with them is every time the more playful those two characters get with each other, you're just starting a timer to one of their races screwing over the other one and just resetting their relationship.
Okay.
In a natural way, not in a bad way, but like anytime they start getting chummy, something bad's about to happen.
I like the new lieutenant commander that's taken over for the girl from last episode that I didn't like at all.
Ivanova. Yes, Ivanova's way better.
I think that's who I'm talking about.
The new girl, yes?
Yeah, she well, because we have her and we have the also the new telepath.
The new psychic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But well,
telepath, I said. The new telepath.
And then of course, those two end up having a rivalry by the end that I thought I would find irritating and was immediately interesting. When we find out about about what we do with telepaths in this society, and like we learn so much stuff about different like factions and groups of people in this, but the idea that if you are a telepath, you either have to go into service, or you have to go to prison, or you have to be put on drugs to not be a telepath.
And the drugs are not like they're bad drugs. They mess you up.
Yeah. That whole thing was really rough, and I just thought it was really interesting that she blames the telepath, or not. It doesn't blame her, but doesn't like what she is in the institution that she's part of. So she says, "I see you as a victim, but you're also, kind of the personification of everything that I can't stand because of what happened to her mother." That was all involved and interesting. But I liked the introduction to that character, because one of the first things I think maybe her first line is, "I'm in the middle of 15 things, all of them annoying." So that was a great line. JMS does a really good job of putting of giving people really distinct voices, I think.
Yeah, Ivanova's got that line about the because an election's going on during this episode.
Yes.
Ivanova's got that line about I think a good leader should always have a strong chin. He has no chin, and his vice president, or his I forget what she calls it. What will be his vice president has many. This is not a good combination. And you don't get it yet. And I feel like she was written to have an accent. She's Russian.
Oh.
And that's a very Russian sentiment.
Okay. So are we going to say she's Russian, or will she suddenly sprout an accent?
No. She never starts an accent. She is a Russian character. And I don't know if the actors couldn't do a Russian accent or if they just decided not to do a Russian accent.
It's like
but I feel
what people
like
complained about with Black Widow at the beginning. Something else that kind of surprised me about this episode, Eric, is all the different places we go. And
the places we
like it's just a really kind of surprisingly exciting episode. Like you've got Garibaldi, Garibaldi. I keep saying Garibaldi.
Someone, if we were just talking, I wouldn't correct you. Someone in the comments is going to complain.
Oh no, that's okay. I mean, I've corrected you on mispronouncing Star Trek things. It's totally cool. We'll learn what shows we're watching. It'll be great. But Garibaldi gets in a fighter and has to go out and find out what's going on with I forget what exact raiders. So we've got raiders, and then so we've got these raiders around the station, and then at exactly the same time you have right around the same time, you have this station a long way away that's a Centauri agricultural station, and because it's just agriculture, that's partly that's the reason that the Centauri are hands off and won't do anything about it. And I thought that whole thing was really sad. That Londo, I'm jumping around, but I thought that was really sad that Londo sent his nephew or cousin or whatever to that station because he wanted to get into the military, and he puts him at an agricultural station, and it still gets attacked, and he thinks that he dies. And then it turns out that he's not dead, but we do the terrorists holding somebody at gunpoint, forcing them to read a statement thing.
Yeah, well, and what I love about how it's done in this episode is it's not like The Dark Knight, where, like, the camera's shaking and, like, the person's clearly reading something. It's done just clean enough that you could almost believe it. Like,
I wasn't sure
it would almost hold up in court.
Yeah, and, at first, I wasn't sure exactly if it was that or if he was just distraught because his station got attacked.
Right.
And I was kind of impressed with them for, making me unsure about that. But yeah, I was surprised that we had these two subplots going on at the same time, and then we got to get in ships and fly around, and all that was kind of fun. The CG is a lot better. It's still very 90s and not great, but there's more depth to it, and I was able to suspend my disbelief a lot more with it.
Yeah. Well, and it's going to stay, like, it'll get a little bit better, but it'll stay about this quality for most of the show.
Yeah, that was more than tolerable to me. Like, it's kind of stylistic. I enjoyed it. I think it goes pretty well with what we're looking at. So I have a question. The way we go long distances in this show, is that a form of faster than light travel, or do they have a wormhole?
It's like Space Fold. It's a wormhole kind of a thing.
But
it's like a Stargate.
Okay, so it's a stable wormhole. Is it one they built, or is it natural?
No, it like opens it up. Like, it's not always there.
But so they can open it anywhere?
They seem to only be able to open, like, because they have like a thing that opens them.
Mm-hmm.
But there are ships that can open them on their own, and you'll see that later.
But are they stationary?
Like, an Armada
is the question
will show up, and like you get like 15 of those wormholes that just open in the middle of nowhere, and ships come out.
Okay, so they're not stationary?
The one the Babylon 5 uses is,
okay,
but there are some ships that can make their own.
They can just make them in the middle. Okay, so it's not. So it's sort of like a stable wormhole you can carry with you, unless it's supposed to be, like you said, a space fold where it's a little bit more like warp travel, but it looks like a. I'm just trying to figure out what the science is. Like, is it?
That's never the thing that I'm super interested in, so I can't 100% tell you. But as I understand it, as I remember, it's like a space fold, wormhole kind of a thing. It's not.
Okay, but those are two different things. Is the thing, and is why I'm asking. It's not really all that important. But the deal is, the reason I'm asking is I can't help but compare these two shows. And in Star Trek, a stable wormhole is an impossibility. Or we thought was an impossibility, or we had never found one until we got the one at Deep Space Nine. Like, that's a really hard thing to do, and this seems to be like stable wormholes that you can just open. So I'm wondering if they look like a wormhole. I'm wondering if they actually look like a wormhole or if they're more like a tesseract.
I really don't know. That's, like I said, that's not the kind of thing that I focus on.
Okay.
It is the get from one place to another hole as far as like my brain is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that's not the most important thing to me either. I'm just curious about it because we have what looks like as hard of science fiction as you ever got with Star Trek, and so I'm sure JMS knows what that is.
I think the rings, because there's like that ring that everybody comes through the Babylon 5.
Yeah.
I think those are kind of like checkpoints.
Okay.
Like they're the easy to go to destinations. I'm not completely sure.
Okay,
I don't really remember.
I'm sure someone in the comments.
I'm sure someone in the comments knows way better than I do.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just a question. I don't mean to spend a lot of time on it. I'm still fascinated by Jakar and how duplicitous he is, but again, everybody seems pretty duplicitous. Like the more I'm watching this, I feel like he's gonna start to get really sympathetic. But just like I said with last episode, I still feel like the show is trying to make us not like him over Londo and other characters.
It's really funny because when I rewatched this, I was like, Alana's the bad guy in this episode again. Oh, Cap's gonna think I don't know what I'm talking about.
You mean Jakar? You mean Jakar?
Yeah. Sorry. Jakar is the bad guy again.
Yeah, because he is.
Yeah. It doesn't stay that way. He becomes really sympathetic.
He's the guy that gets caught red-handed again, and the whole thing is a conspiracy run by him. But what's interesting is he's the only person there. Now that I'm thinking about it, who's actually working with and not against his government.
Yeah.
Because he and the Narn are right on the same page, and he's working for them to do that, and everybody else is kind of is trying to do the right thing despite their kind of apathetic, out of touch government.
Well,
which kind of thematically the big takeaway, I thought.
Because of how politics work, that'll shift based on just character to character. Sometimes they'll line up with their government, and sometimes they won't.
Yeah, of course. No, and I didn't figure that would be like a staple and like those were archetypes, but just, for the situation in this episode, I thought that was interesting because I feel like knowing now what you said about Jakar, it feels like they're playing him up as a red herring where he's just gonna always be the bad guy. Like, if you just watch the pilot and this, he looks like a Saturday morning cartoon villain. Like every week he has a machination and we've got to stop him, every time. And he and Sinclair still have some really cool exchanges where Sinclair's like, you're not going to be able to keep getting away with things and I'm watching you. I like
this.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I'll wait till the end.
I like getting to see more of the Council of Ambassadors, but I couldn't help but crack up at them because it's just a whole bunch of different looking species, and the makeup job is great and a lot of complex looking different species. But they all look like actors that are really uncomfortable in their makeup. And there's a point where Jakar is like, I think it's Jakar, is like makes a motion and says, "Does anyone second?" And then one of the really uncomfortable actors in makeup just like puts his hand up in the air, like, "Yeah, can we leave? I need to get out of this makeup." I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, for like the first half of season 1, you're gonna see a lot of really unique, cool alien designs, and then production and scheduling finally catch up with them, and you start getting their forehead's a little weird, their nose is a little weird. But they really try in the beginning to not do that, and then they're like, oh, there's a reason Star Trek does that, because if we're only going to see these people in this one episode, why would we spend all this time?
Yeah. I hope the Bajoran. I hope we get a Bajoran or something that looks like a Bajoran in the show at some point, so that I can be like wrinkly nose people, and then you can be like, no, they have a name, and here's what it is. Stop calling them that. What else do I want to mention about this? Garibaldi's a lot of fun. I'm immediately, with this episode, starting to understand why you like him so much. I thought his exchange with Londo, where Londo is ready to go kill Jakar, and he tells him, you better go put your gun back, or I'm going to shoot you right here. I loved that exchange a lot. You get to the end of that, and Londo says, "Would you have actually killed me?" And he says, "Yes, I would have." This is all about people doing what they think they have to, no matter how bad it is, for the greater good.
And his second favorite thing in the universe.
His second favorite thing in the universe. I loved that. My wife and I just cracked up at that at the end, where he's watching Duck Dodgers, and immediately I went, "Oh, I didn't realize this was a Warner Brothers thing," but now I will never forget that it's a Warner Brothers thing. Warner Brothers always does that. They're like, I would not be surprised if Batman or Superman showed up on a TV or something somewhere in this. Like Warner's is always putting their other properties in things, and it is smart because then they can use like when you're in a world like this that's supposed to be the future of our world, you can use real, actual 20th century things that people are familiar with, and you don't even have to, and because you own them, you don't even have to always go to things that are in the public domain. That's nice. That's a thing that I was really surprised to see this early in a brand new show, because Star Trek starts doing it in later shows, but it's a thing that doesn't happen in real early in TNG and things, and then you have this funny thing in Star Trek where people are always talking about 20th century things as ancient, which just drives me absolutely insane. It's been 300 years.
Only
it's
20th
not
century things.
Or anything before it, but like somebody will bring up like a car or something from the 20th century, and it'll be called. First season TNG did it all the time, and TOS did it too. But the thing about TOS is that it was ambiguous as to what time period we were in. For the longest time, like when you wrote Star Trek scripts, you didn't assume that people knew exactly what century you were in. So it could have been 1,000 years later, maybe. Of course, now we have canonicized what years it was, but TNG, what century we're in is canonicized from the very beginning. So when you're in the 24th century and you call something from 400 years ago or 300 years ago ancient, that's hilarious. And so I was excited to see Looney Tunes in the second pilot of the show.
There's an episode coming up that involves an antique motorcycle from the 1990s.
But see, it would be antique.
I don't remember if they exactly refer to it as antique or ancient but like there's
if they call it
a thing where it's like, oh, this thing from right when you're watching this show, look how old it is in the future.
Yeah, but that's as long as they say antique and not ancient, it's fine.
There's a funny kind of side story. Peter David wrote a novel for this series, because obviously it's a science fiction series on TV. Of course, there's novels.
And of course, Peter David is writing some of them.
Peter David writes an episode of the series, actually.
Cool.
A really fun Londo episode.
I really hope Peter David... See, I always wondered if Peter David ever got to do TV, because it always seemed like he should be doing TV. And I think the new Star Trek series will be crazy if they don't finally let him write episodes. Because
That's
best...
true. Well, and they just... Oh, no, I lost you.
No, I'm still here. I was just waiting for you.
Oh, no, I just heard the best. We might have a slight lag.
Is that what it is? Because like I started saying a thing, and then you started saying a thing, and so I was just waiting for you. I feel like we're stumbling
over each other more.
Yeah, we keep accidentally. Like I say, so if anybody thinks that we're being jerks to each other, we are totally accidentally interrupting each other because there's like a 5 to 10 second lag.
Yeah,
that's how long the lag is. So anyway,
you said the best.
So anyway, yeah, Eric, the best Star Trek novels are Peter David novels, or at least the best that I've read. And people loved New Frontier in the 90s.
And that just started back up like 2 years ago, I think.
Oh, has he come back and started doing more of them? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I want to say I saw something about that.
I think if the new series is doing the anthology thing, there's every reason to give New Frontier a season. Cast Calhoun, either cast a younger Shelby or set it farther in the future and let that actress come back. She's great, but like there's all kinds of cool things. And I mean, good reasons to do that series. I haven't read much of it, but I don't know. I mean, and Peter David takes characters I don't like in Star Trek and makes them amazing in books. And he takes concepts that you think would sound terrible, like he takes the Worf Troy Riker love triangle and makes it the best love triangle I've ever read in anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like
Cool.
I don't want that to even be a thing, but when he does it, it's awesome. And he does it. You're
So
gonna love
anyway,
this. He does it in episode, and you'll see this character in DS9. She pops up 3 times. But he takes Deanna Troy's mother, Waxana Troy, played by Majel Barrett, and has Q marry her in an episode called, or in a book called Q in Law, and it's really good too. So yeah, Peter David needs to come back and get to write Star Trek episodes.
okay, we'll start. Well, Peter David wrote a book for Babylon 5. And apparently, there was a huge controversy with his editor because he has Garibaldi like drop in on someone like in a fight and say, "What's up, Doc?" and the editor was like, "That's silly. He wouldn't say that." And Peter David's like, "What are you talking about? It's established in episode 1. He's a huge Looney Tunes fan." And so it like went all the way up the chain to JMS, and he's like, "You know, that's exactly what he would say in that situation."
That's hilarious. But he needed JMS to finally sign off on it?
Yeah, they needed JMS to sign off on Garibaldi saying, "What's up, Doc?"
That's ridiculous. It's like, just go back and watch your own show. Yeah,
I want to mention...
We're once again already well past the timer. So I mean, like, there's a bunch of stuff that I could be talking about, but I don't want this to go on forever, so... What were you saying?
Okay, I want to mention there's a character introduced in this episode named Veer. He is Lando's assistant.
Yeah.
He is the first of 3 assistants. Not Lando's. There are 3 assistants to main characters. There's one, Delenn gets one, and Jakar gets one. They're all important and, like, major characters. So Veer is not just, like, kind of here for this episode. He's kind of a major character for the whole series.
Good to know. Does the nephew come back?
I think he comes back for, like, an episode, but
Okay.
he's not, like, a major character.
I was curious about the cliffhanger because I thought it was weird. That, like, Sinclair goes into his quarters and turns off the lights, and then he gets a page, and it's like, something's happening! And then it's over? And, like, we don't even know what we're cliffhangering at all. It's just...
I don't think it's a cliffhanger. I think it's supposed to show that, he doesn't get to sleep.
Oh, is that all?
Like,
is that all that was for? Okay.
Well, because they mentioned earlier in the episode, there is, like, 10 minutes a day where he has his comm turned off.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, I didn't.
Yeah,
it didn't occur to me that was a payoff for that. That's the big character thing we're building for him. Is that
like, you don't get to sleep.
Being a commander is an all the time kind of job, and you have to be a robot, and you can't be a person.
Well, and you just finished this huge eventful day, and you don't get to go back to sleep. Something else happens.
Yeah.
So it's not a cliffhanger. It's just a little character moment. I mean, it could be a cliffhanger because I guarantee you next episode something will happen that's going to be some kind of crisis.
Yeah, it could have been that thing. Who knows? Yeah, I just liked that we opened right away with that attack on that space station, and I just thought that was a really good way to jump us right into a situation and that whole kind of hostage situation, or not hostage situation, but terror situation was quite interesting. I also liked this as an alternate, or not alternate history, but just like Star Trek, a history of the future kind of show. We've got that speech that Sinclair has about the long bloody history of Earth, and he mentions Pearl Harbor and the bombing of San Diego and the destruction of the first Mars colonies. And I was like, wow, so this is a world that had it just as rough in the 20th century and afterwards for a while. And the difference between it and Star Trek is that we didn't then meet the Vulcans and get Utopia.
No, we met the Centauri and they tried to con us.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like almost an alternate Star Trek.
Well, and I would imagine, like, at this point in time on television, it would be hard to not feel that way.
Well, and
like,
that's
coming on the heels of
thing.
TNG.
That's not a bad thing at all. I mean, I don't think it's ripping off anything. Like you can't make a show like this and not draw those sorts of comparisons. But it kind of feels like JMS is doing that intentionally.
He might be. I don't know. I actually, as we watch these episodes, I want to watch the ones that have commentary with commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Before, like, I'll watch the episode and I'll watch with commentary. You would think the first episode of the series would have commentary. It does not. It's that Buffy thing where, like, there's going to be, like, 4 random episodes a season where JMS decided to show up and do commentary for.
Yeah, except the pilot for Buffy was at least one of them.
Well, but Buffy didn't have a pilot movie that was before that. I'm sure there's commentary on that.
That's true, but you'd think when you were putting together the commentaries for a specific box set that's not going to include the pilot, maybe it would have that. So yeah, we're way out of time for when we were planning on ending this, but we're still, I don't know, I think it's fair. We're still in early feeling these shows out and learning about them.
Yeah, I doubt we, like, on episode, like, 17, we'll still be...
Yeah, I want to start timing us to 20 minutes, but the thing I'm having right now, Eric, is I keep questioning things I want to say because I don't know the show yet. So, like, I'll start talking and then I'm thinking, Eric's going to totally correct me and the thing I think I'm seeing isn't actually happening.
Well, I mean, that's part of watching a show.
Yeah. I just, like,
you
every time I start making a
point... shoes were a motif?
Like, I think we're both doing this. Like, every time I start to make a point, I'm just waiting for you to interrupt me and tell me why I'm wrong. It's like, I can see why you would think that's what it is, but when you get this as a on a greater whole, you'll realize that is not the conclusion you're supposed to be drawing right now. Or it is, but later on you'll find out why that was a red herring, or they were trying to get you off the scent.
Well, I mean, the thing with Babylon 5 is, I'm not going to say that any of the conclusions that you're drawing about people are wrong. I just think, like, it's a very shifting show. So, like, you're right today, but tomorrow, like, things might be different because it's a different political situation and they're dealing differently. So
yeah, sure. Well, that's what I gathered.
I'm glad you liked it so much.
I did. I mean, I thought it was quite good. I'm sure, I mean, people say that the first season of the show isn't great. I think that for a, again, kind of second pilot, it's really good. And I think not that it's anything like the same, about the same things, but I think it's very comparable to the second pilot for Star Trek when you look at the cage to the man, or not the man trap, to, that was the first aired episode, but to Where No Man Has Gone Before, in that it's like, it's faster moving, it's kind of more exciting, it's got more fighting and like, you know, gunplay and stuff. And I don't know if that was intentional, but it is an interesting thing that they have in common.
Well, I can tell you it wasn't intentional.
It feels more viable than that pilot did. But then the difference is this does feel like the same show as that, and it's just partly because it's just a 45-minute episode. It's paced differently, and the cage, of course, was also short. It wasn't 2 hours, but that does not feel like exactly the same show. So,
well, and we brought up the cage comparisons last time because we lose like 4 characters and they're replaced in this episode.
Yeah, that's where it's
the new Doctor has not shown up yet. He comes.
Yeah, I was kind of looking for the Doctor, and then I was like, well, surely the show will have a Doctor.
Yeah, he's, if I remember correctly, he's introduced as arriving on the station. So he's not just like there one day. Because he is a new character.
So that means that the guy from before could actually still be there, and we just never saw him. Because otherwise, they just don't have a doctor during this episode.
Yeah, that's true.
I told Sarah,
well,
I was like, what I want to think must have happened is that whatever, like, changed his life about seeing Kosh, he was like, that's it, I can't be a doctor anymore, and he just leaves.
The telepath from last episode comes back. I don't think anybody else does. And if they do come back, I don't remember them coming back. It's, not important to the plot of the series.
Yeah.
Whereas the telepath from the first episode, from the pilot, is important to the rest of the series.
Okay. Interesting, because she feels like just replaced.
No. She and Talia are very different characters. And you'll kind of see that as that goes on.
Well, they don't seem like the same character at all. It just seems like they were like, here's a more interesting character and actress that we'll replace her with.
I think it's in season 1 where you get to meet more Psy-Corps people. I don't know if you know about the Psy-Corps.
I mean, nothing beyond what I got here.
Okay. One of the lead Psy-Corps characters that we get as a reoccurring character, but not like a main character, is a major Star Trek actor.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, don't tell me. It'll be fun to
I'm not going to tell you, but I didn't know if that was something just osmosisly you knew.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know that there are Trek actors that pop in and out, but I don't know exactly who they are. And I know, and you probably don't know this, I know that there are quite a few writers that come in from Star Trek.
Someone mentioned that in the comments, that there's a lot of TNG writers on the first season, the first 2 seasons.
Well, and I think, if memory serves, that DC Fontana has some scripts. I don't know if that's true. I have to go back and look. She wrote a lot of the really beloved and memorable TOS episodes. But I know that there are supposed to be a few. I'm gonna look that up real quick. I'm almost positive that there's some Bab 5 DC Fontana. Yeah, there is. How much did she write? She wrote 3. And they're all in 94, which makes it what, end of first or beginning of second. Eric, are you there?
After the second half of what?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can.
Oh no, I can hear you.
No, I can hear you too.
Okay.
Yeah. So 94, that would make her episodes either end of first or beginning of second.
Then, because like I said, halfway through second, JMS takes over and he doesn't let go.
Yeah.
The only writer that I really know, aside from Peter David, who writes an episode, the only writer that I really know is Larry DiTilio, writes a couple episodes, and he is one of the 2 head writers of Beast Wars.
Oh, weird. Okay.
And
yeah.
I think he also did like He-Man, so maybe he's friends with JMS because JMS wrote He-Man. So that might have been just like him pulling in like a friend of his.
Yeah, I was gonna say that doesn't surprise me given his work in the cartoon world.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Everybody, thanks as always for listening. And once again, this wasn't as long as first episode, a little longer than we're planning on these being week to week. But as we each get more solidified in understanding the worlds that we're talking about, I'm sure they'll get a little bit shorter. Maybe.
Yeah. Our summaries will be less than like half questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, hope you enjoyed it, folks, and leave your comments. Let us know what you thought of what you think of these episodes and any tidbits about these shows that you might know. Because, like I said, it's been wonderful to learn things.
Preferably not spoiler tidbits.
Yeah.
There was a couple of comments here and there that I was looking at where I was like, oh, I wish, like, that's borderlining on spoilers.
Yeah, try to get. And again, I realize that these shows are, a couple of decades old at this point, but just remember that it's not spoilers for other
One of
people.
them is new for each of us.
Yeah, it's not just spoilers for other people watching, it's for the 2 of us. We don't want to know too much about our own futures. I mean, the shows that we're watching. Everybody, thanks again for listening. We sure appreciate it. I am Captain Logan.
And I had a dream that I was having the life choked out of me. And when I met Captain Logan, I knew him from my dream.
I knew that that in 20 years, Captain Logan would choke me to death. See you later, folks.